Well, howdy, 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 everybody. So good to see you all tonight. I know that it'll take a few seconds for this live to actually get out to you and let you all on. So we'll just give you a few seconds here and see where you're listening from tonight. So one of the cool things last night we were able to show folks is just how many countries that people have been watching from. And I think we are up to around 140, 145 countries now, which is people around the world joining us. So actually this morning I spent a little bit of time and was actually Googling some of these places around the world. And it's fascinating to see just the multitude of different places that people are listening from. So again, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And if you would like, just in the comments, let us know where you're listening from. And then if you watched the summit today, let us know what your top takeaways. Now, we have some special guests tonight. We've got some folks who I couldn't convince them to do a presentation for the summit because they're just really busy growing lots of fabulous mushrooms, but we were able to convince them to come on live and answer your questions and chat. And again, tonight's focus was all about getting started and growing mushrooms. So that's what they're on for tonight. So we have some speakers from tonight as well as some special guests that are just on the chat, growing mushrooms, chat, talking about starting your mushroom business. So we've got people from Ontario, Kansas. Yeah, keep it coming, guys. We will go ahead and we can go ahead and bring our guests on. We've got Scottsburg, Indiana. Anna, good to see you. You've been on every single night. All right, so we will go ahead and bring our guests on here, folks. So first up, we've got TR Davis, and TR is from Earth Angel Mushrooms you're in Missouri, right?
Yep. Pacific, yeah. Missouri, and Bourbon, Missouri.
Okay, and how far apart are those?
They're about 40 miles apart.
Wow, so that's a bit of a travel.
Little bit, yeah. So that's where I'm at right now, is in Bourbon. Most of my stuff takes place in Pacific, but these are all my shiitake block. Not all the shiitake blocks, but these are all shiitake blocks here at this place.
Gotcha. Very, very cool.
Yep.
And TR also produces a lot of blocks. So actually a lot of the blocks we buy for our operation are right from him. So that's actually probably your biggest part of your business, right?
It is. Yep. Block sales. That's pretty much over 90% of the business is block sales now.
Very cool. And next up is Eric Myers. Eric, welcome. Glad to have you tonight. Eric is from Myers Mushrooms, and you are out in
Wichita, Kansas. I'm in Hayesville, just south of Wichita.
Okay. I always forget if it was New Mexico or Kansas.
I was in El Paso. That's where I started, and I was there for the first 4 years. And now we just moved here and we got all set up in the new facility.
Yeah, and the new facility is you're selling, obviously you do a lot of mushroom supplies, you manufacture sterilizers, steam, that kind of stuff, and you also do
we have the Bubba's Barrels is making the sterilizers out of Tennessee, and then I have my baggers made here where it's a dry bag machine. That's made in Gridley, Kansas, and then we're selling bags and flow hoods.
Gotcha. Very cool. And then you also grow some on the side as well.
Yes, and we grow, and we're going to be getting into spawn in the spring as well. I have an autoclave and a boiler that we're going to be firing up pretty soon.
Very cool. Well, welcome. And then last up is Logan. And Logan, you're on the West Coast, correct?
Yeah, I'm living in Noti, Oregon right now.
Okay, and you are a speaker for day 2, and you talked all about, talk a little bit about what you presented on today.
Yeah, sure. So my presentation was on mycoforestry. So I was really looking at the role that fungi play in our forestry ecosystems, and how just having better understanding what those roles are, we can better take care of and manage our forest systems, and just kind of give a more holistic lens when working with our forests.
Cool. Very cool. So we've got a bunch of folks joining us tonight. Welcome, 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 everybody. Tulsa, Oklahoma, hi from Australia, Delaware, US, Ohio, which is Bruce is actually right down the street from me pretty much, Colorado, Michigan. So yeah, and if you guys have questions, and again, day 2 is all about growing. So we shared a bunch of different grow systems. We had some deep dives into different aspects of, straw, growing oysters on straw. We talked about, man, gosh, I got to go actually look. There was like, growing on logs. So we had a bunch of things today, but we're going to talk. And again, Eric and TR, they're in the business of growing mushrooms, on a much larger scale. And they've been at it for a while. So this is where we want to deep dive, ask them the hard questions. Actually, TR and I were talking about Kings right before we got on, because he's got a great YouTube video on that. And so we were kind of discussing the finer details and kind of like some of the mistakes I'm making right now. So feel free to send those questions, put them right in the chat, and we will get those answered. And we've got the Bahamas and Aruba represented tonight as well. So yeah, I don't know if you guys want to share a little bit or talk a little bit. TR, for those brand new mushroom farmers, what kind of advice would you give them?
So advice, learn as much as you can before you start. So the difference between now and like when I started is now there are numerous YouTube channels, whether it be Eric, me, there's a million YouTube channels out there now. How to learn mushroom cultivation and not make mistakes. Learn mistakes from knuckleheads like me so you don't have to. And before you invest that money, watch them all. Take what you can and apply that information to what you're doing to be able to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely spent more than a few nights on the couch on YouTube. There's some crazy rabbit trails you can get down.
Oh yeah. Yep, for sure. And one other point I'd like to make in regards to you will hear, if you ask 100 mushroom growers the same question, most likely you'll get 100 different answers. So whenever I try to teach someone, I try to teach them based on a concept. So there's a million different ways to solve an equation. Look at it like mathematics. So this equation, how do you get the answer 4? Well, there is an infinite number of equations with the answer of 4. So don't take things verbatim. Learn the concept so you can get the correct answer and apply it to your own setting.
Very cool. Yeah, I understand. And that's, I think, exactly, kind of what our company has been about. When we started we started the farm consulting company, and then we moved into an education company, and we just do more educational things. But it came back to, because everyone's farm is going to be so different. I mean, you're out there in Missouri, get Eric out in Kansas, very different environments. Here in Ohio, we got a different environment. West Coast is a different environment. So, you got the principles as you were, and then you can have to adapt it to what your ecosystem is going to be.
Yeah, and with that, you want to latch on to regional growers and learn off of them. Like somebody in the high desert, they might say, hey, swamp coolers are the bee's knees, and use swamp coolers for preconditioning, and that's all you need except for the peak heat summer. But that won't work in Florida. That won't work on East Coast or West Coast. So you got to get your information generally and get the concepts. And then if you can latch on to somebody locally in your region that can guide you on that. And the same things with gardening, you know what I mean? Different regions have different crops and different all that. So, I mean, it's all the same. But yeah, that's one important thing, to have somebody locally that you can kind of look up to and have answered questions for that region, and hopefully get some eyes on your operation too. Because it's one thing to talk to somebody on the phone. It's another thing to have another grower come and look at your operation. Like me and TR, like I visited his op, and we feed off each other with that. We'll both learn from that. When we visit, he'll learn from me. I'll give him ideas, and vice versa. So that's a really important thing for any new grower or any experienced grower, is to network with other growers in the area.
Yeah, absolutely. So how, Eric, has your new out in Kansas differed from New Mexico?
The market's different. So it's a lot. The clients here are buying a lot more. Like in El Paso, I was lucky if I could sell 10 pounds to one restaurant. That would be like a big account. here we had accounts that most people, like we only had 4 accounts and they were doing 40 pounds each, just starting off. So that was kind of a shocker to me because we approached like 10 different restaurants, and then the ones that did take on were like, yeah, 40 pounds a week. And I was like, oh, wow, I wasn't really expecting that. COVID has changed a lot of that too. I mean, right now with it getting colder and COVID spiked really bad in Kansas. So I think, well, nationwide for that matter, but a lot of the restaurants are either closing down, like one of our clients closed down, that affected things. But overall, the new shop has been great. It's a lot bigger. I used to be in a 2-car garage, and now I'm in a 2,400 square foot workshop. So that's night and day when it comes to how the operation operates. But yeah, it's been interesting. It's been a huge learning experience for me. A lot of things that I would do differently if I did it again, and still a lot of things to fix with the build itself. So, but it's been fun. It's been a good journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the cool thing. Talk to us about, starting in a 2-car garage and what's just possible in a 2-car garage. Because that's something that, I find so fascinating, is just how much you can generate from just a 2-car garage. And I think actually you and I both saw the same thread. Someone posted a mushroom farming or mushroom growing group. And it was like, can you actually make money at this mushroom farming thing? And I had to laugh. And then you commented and just kind of shared exactly, what you can do.
Yeah. So, I mean, your numbers in a 2-car garage, that's about the minimum that I would recommend for anybody trying to even look to get into it. And that's not going to be a full-time job. That's like a side hustle. You're talking maybe 200 pounds a week at the most, probably 100 pounds a week. It depends on your setup, which isn't enough to really support a living. But I mean, if you want to have a side job, a hobby / job, that would do it. And a 2-car garage is big enough to have everything in that one roof. Your bagging, your sterilization, your lab, your incubation, and your fruiting, all in that one, and your cold storage, all in that one like 450 square foot area. Any smaller than that, and you're going to have like your bagging outside, your sterilizing outside, because it's just too small to really work properly. But garages, like, man, that's where I started. That's where my channel started out, with work. My garage. A lot of people copied that layout and that concept with the poly walls and the way that I had my layout, like a horseshoe kind of. The operation in El Paso, it's still an operation. Andre Gutierrez is running it, still under the Myers Mushrooms name, and he's doing about 150 pounds a week at full capacity. So the biggest thing that I had with mine was my incubation wasn't big enough. I only had 8x4 incubation for a 7x10 fruiting room. And I know now that it should be 1-to-1. You should at least have 1-to-1 square footage fruiting to incubation. And that was the big learning lesson from that. So when we built the new operation at Andre's house, it really set the bar for what you could do in a 2-car garage with the proper layout.
Yeah. My barn's 1,550 square feet. So I'm trying to think about 2,400. That'd be really nice.
Yeah, 2,400 is a huge difference from a 2-car garage. It's night and day. Night and day.
Yeah, just so much more. So Gene has a great question. Can the bags be reused, or are they a one-time use or one harvest?
One and done. The bag itself.
Yeah, I would not recommend it. Yeah, because they get tore up. Like every cycle, they get more broken down. They get pinholes in them. So it's one and done.
But the blocks, you at least fruit them usually twice, and then you toss the blocks. But are some people going for a third, or is just try to go for a third?
It just depends. Yep, you can do as many fruitings as you. It's going to keep giving mushrooms. I mean, all of us that had a bunch of blocks in the compost pile when I was growing a lot, there were times where you would throw blocks in that compost pile for months and months and months, and they just keep fruiting and fruiting and fruiting. So it's based on the efficiency of the block. Your best yield is off the first flush, and then every subsequent flush is worse and worse. So it's how much space do you have? And then if you're doing it for a business, you say, how much space is it costing me? What is it costing me? And can I make more money off of bringing fresh blocks in?
Yeah. And the other issue when you run into multiple flushes, like especially past the third and fourth flush, you run into an increased chance of contamination. Flies move into the bags, and then you have the maggots crawling around them, and then it's a nightmare in the fruiting room. So in the long run, it's better to just do like first and done, or first and second flush and done, and get those blocks out of there before they lose all their vigor, before they lose all that moisture. Third flush is typically not worth it. You know, third flush is going to be like not even a half pound off of a block that harvested 2 or 3 pounds in the first flush. And it's just, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your space, like TR said. And that block is generating CO2, even if it's all shriveled up. So it's causing you to exhaust more air, which makes you suck in more air, which costs you money to heat and cool. So you got to look at it like that too. It's not just square footage, it's your energy usage. You know, if you cram 1,000 blocks in one room because you're doing 3 flushes versus only doing 600 blocks and just doing first and second flush, you're going to use a lot less exhaust and intake and a lot less energy, especially in the summer and in the winter when you're heating and cooling.
Now, some people talk about, soaking the blocks before the second flush. Is that worth it, or is that just a pain in the butt?
Depends on the species. Like that's the standard for shiitakes if you're doing multiple flushes with shiitakes. But there's so many variables in regards to shiitakes at second flush that most growers that I know, the overwhelming majority, do not do that. We throw them away after the first flush because you get mold all over them. It's just a nightmare. So the short answer to your question is it's a waste of time, in my opinion.
Implementing on a large scale is really hard. You know, it's one thing when you're like doing 4 or 5 blocks, but when you're talking like 50 or 100 blocks, like that's a lot of like soaking. You're talking like a 300-gallon tub, and you're moving these blocks just to move them back again. When like my whole thing is efficiency. Like I want to move the block onto the rack, not have to touch it again until it's ready to go out and it's done with. You know, not have to handle it every couple days and minimal handling. So,
no, that's great.
I'd like to make
go ahead, Logan.
So if the people that are interested about the whole issue is the bags aren't really reusable. I've talked to some Asian growers who actually do grow out of bottles and jars. However, it's for them, they have these really high-end facilities that actually clean out the jar. And in China and Asia, it's everything's automated. So really high-end cleaning systems that are able to actually score out all these jars, all the substrate out. We're also very economically viable for a small scale grower to do so. I have one friend who's a small scale grower who's currently trying to do the jar method so they can actually have reusable containers out of principle, moon mushrooms. And I know there's a big shiitake grower who actually does everything out of bottles, and they've actually created their own whole automated system. And I believe they're out of California. I just wanted to mention that for people who are asking about the
now I know
that's the other method I've heard of is reusable, but as far as
and I know some people are using 5-gallon buckets and with straw. I don't see anyway, I don't know what the yields are like on that. And then the other thing is I've seen some people do plastic containers.
I used to do plastic containers. That's how I started. Yep.
Yeah, I did.
I'm thoroughly familiar with plastic containers. And it actually, to keep them from drying out on the holes, I wanted to not have all of the waste, but I had to put trash bags over the entire container to keep it from drying. And in addition, the labor it took to clean them out, it didn't justify it.
Yeah. Gotcha. So use the bags and then just deal with that. Yeah.
And like the jars, you could make some kind of hand rigged stuff to, kind of automate it or make it a little bit more labor friendly. But at the end of the day, you're still using plastic, and that plastic still has a cycle. So you're going to get 10 or 20 cycles out of those jars, and they're going to get brittle from the autoclave, and they're going to break. So it's not like they're this everlasting plastic thing. They do have a cycle. Especially when you're autoclaving them up to 240 degrees, it makes it softer every time, or not softer, but harder to where it cracks. But yeah, the key for those is the fact that they can automate it like a bottling line, like a Coca-Cola bottling line, pretty much, where it's just boom, 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 and it just inoculates each jar, it seals the lid, and nobody really touches it. It's all hands off, but those machines cost $60 to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And it's really cool to look at those videos coming out of China, doing the kings on just oh my gosh, it blows your mind, just the size of the kings are getting off of that. But yeah, it's a very specific setup. I think we just have to realize that agriculture uses a lot of plastic. And yes, we try to reduce it as much as possible, but it makes this function so much easier and so much better.
Yeah.
Someone's asking for the contact info for Justin. Yeah, Steve reached out to us. There should have been his email, should have been listed there for Justin, but reach out to us if you need it. Nicole's asking, what's the weekly output for a business that will sustain you financially? Well, that's kind of a tough question. Like what size?
It's model. It's not the size. It's the business model.
Yeah.
Of what?
And if you feel it bigger, it's going to need more. So that's the one thing that some people fail to realize. Like if you build a 20,000 square foot facility, sure, it can put out 2,000 pounds, but just to break even, you got to grow 600 pounds or 1,000 pounds, and that's making no money. So there's definitely like a happy medium, and you have to match your market. That's more than anything. Like what your sales is going to drive. That's going to be your driving factor. Is what can your sales take? How big of a facility do you need to match that? And do you have them on the same level, or do you have not enough facility or too much facility? Because it's gonna that there's a couple factors in it. There isn't just like a magic answer.
Not a magic answer.
Yeah, and then you throw employees in there. That's a whole nother ballgame.
That's the biggest thing is employees. Because you start off doing the work yourself at a level that not one employee you will ever have will do. They will not think like you. They will not operate like you. So you have to factor that inefficiency in there, and it's hard. That's the hardest part. It's factoring how much things will cost, and so it's going to cost money, and you never know until you know. It's the hardest thing, man.
Yeah. Now, okay, but let's go back to Eric. Let's go back to that 2-car garage. You said you could pump out 150 pounds consistently, probably. Now let's take that 150 pounds and break that out into, let's say you're doing some kings, let's say you're doing some lion's mane, you're doing oysters. If you're selling at a farmer's market, you're getting $12 to $15 a pound at least if you averaged it out over the different species.
Yeah, but then you're losing at the farmer's market. Then you're going to be at the farmer's market, 2 or 3 days a week, depending on your demand. Some people can move 600 pounds at a farmer's market or 300 pounds at a farmer's market, whereas some people only move 20 pounds. So it really it depends on your market. Personally, I don't hate the farmer's market. I don't like going to the farmer's market. I prefer not to. I'm a mushroom grower, and I'm best growing mushrooms or developing equipment or doing sales or whatever. That's what my expertise is. It's not sitting at a booth selling mushrooms. So what I do is I sell to wholesalers who will resell at the farmer's market for me. Is more worth our time. So that's what we do, and we sell around like $8 a pound. I know TR sells big wholesale. What do you sell at TR?
So just to make it clear to everybody, for box now, but when I was selling, so I would sell shiitake at $425 to $450 a pound, and oyster at between $325 and $375. That's here. I have a really good friend in California that's selling wholesale, and his prices on oysters will go into the $2s sometimes. So
it depends on where you're
at.
Yeah. And then so based on that, I mean, you could make a couple like $3,000 or $4,000 out of a garage per month once you cover your overhead and all that. But you're going to make more money if you go to the farmer's market, but now you're going to be spending 60 hours or whatever between the farmer's market and all your production versus spending 20 hours producing it and then just doing deliveries to wholesale, direct to chef delivery. So you can make between $2,000 and $4,000, maybe $5,000 in a garage. That's kind of pushing it. If you can push that much product out of a little garage and sell it all, I would definitely look at scaling up. And that's typically what people do. They start out in a garage because it's minimal out of pocket. You can get a setup for about 10 grand for a good setup with your good HVAC and all your framing and all your structures. So.
But let me stop you there, Eric. That's 10 grand from doing everything along the way. That's not, if you're just buying blocks from someone else, you can get set up for a fraction of that.
Yes, you can, but then your overhead's more because your block costs. So there's definitely but the learning curve is a lot shorter with that because you already have the blocks ready to go, and all you need is a fruit.
Yeah, and if you had that entire space, so take out incubation, take out lab out of your garage. If you're buying blocks and you have a little bit of space, that's why the majority of my customers buy blocks, is because they don't want to incubate them, or they want to use that incubation space as fruiting space. So you get blocks, you fruit them, then you can take that garage from 200 pounds to 600 pounds or whatever it is.
Because it's going to be half incubation and just a big walk-in. You'd have to have a walk-in to store all the blocks and store all the mushrooms that you're pushing from, or a lot of, no, you couldn't even do like fridges. You'd have to have a walk-in at that point. If you're buying pounds of blocks, you'd have to have a walk-in.
So I have let's see, it's a 10 by 11 walk-in, and then my fruiting room is 15 by 23. So it's a little bit smaller than a 2-car garage. And we estimated with running in metro racks and stuff, I should be easily able to push 300 to 500 pounds a week if I'm doing just flip. And that's going to be super tight, but we could get up to there. And then obviously at that point, we're going to build our own custom big building. And then when we did that, we would actually maybe move back into doing our own, inoculation and all of that. But again, I don't with our situation, what we're doing, I doubt we'll ever go to that because we have other irons in the fire. And again, for us, the mushrooms is just to get basically be the mushroom person in our entire region, the Dayton area. So, because we're going to have the horticulture, all of that. It's just so much to deal with. I'd rather buy blocks that I know are going to work instead of having to invest in something.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to double or triple your expenses if you're going to be sterilizing. And then on top of that, you probably want to go take some kind of classes or something to get some hands-on with somebody if you're going to be doing your own inoculation. So the model of just buying the blocks is definitely an easy way in to the industry. It's just your weekly expenses are a lot more because now you're buying thousands of dollars in blocks, but you're not buying thousands of dollars in sterilizers and flow hoods and pressure cookers and all that kind of
employees. You're not paying the employees to inoculate them. You're not paying the employees to bag them. Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to cut a block and put it on a shelf than to do all the inoculation. There's a lot more that can go wrong. Like TR is probably throwing away more blocks than 90% of the growers that have made in their life. He'll throw away hundreds and thousands of blocks because, things go wrong, and that's what happens. I've thrown out hundreds of blocks too. Whereas you're not going to have that happen if you're buying blocks. They're all going to work. You're not going to have the trichoderma outbreaks and all the different funk outbreaks.
So the median after so a couple questions coming in here about what you do with the blocks afterwards. They're great into just, again, as TR said earlier, just put them outside, let them pile up, let some more mushrooms come off of them. We're gonna actually start vermicomposting our blocks, and then obviously sell all the vermicompost. And then obviously after they've composted, they're excellent for the garden.
Yeah. So I don't even compost them. I just put them right in the walkway. I put them right in the walkway, and they will fruit in the walkways. There's no weed seeds in them. They're like a mulch, and they help with moisture retention. So they're great in the garden. I use them in El Paso, and I'm using them here too. So I don't even bother composting. I'll just bust them up and throw them in the walkway. It's called a day. Yeah. And you can also sell it. I know people who do sell used blocks. They'll $20 a truckload. So.
Very cool. Someone's asking about, can you incubate in buckets and fruit in those same buckets, like 5-gallon buckets? And yes, I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
And then someone was saying some strains of oysters on straw produce more on the second and third flush. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah. Straw is weird like that.
Yeah, and like, so we did like actually some really low. So actually, how I got started was super low tech. You know, a 50-gallon drum. We filled it with water. We dumped the straw and kept it below the surface for a number of days. Inoculated it, stuck it in bags, stuck it in my basement, and we grew mushrooms. So that was kind of cool. So it actually, we had Adam speak today from Grow Cycle in the UK, and he actually talked about that entire system. So if you guys haven't watched that, make sure you do. So Jared has another question. What is maximum output you could get out of a properly set up 5x5 grow tent for fruiting? Eric?
Typical rule of thumb is like a pound per square foot, but you can go double or triple that if you dial it in right. And that's a pound per square foot per week, but you got to keep it full. You know, you're not going to get a pound per square foot per week if you only have a little tiny rack for incubation. You'd have to have a sizable incubation to keep it full. I've done like 30 pounds a week out of a 3-foot by 2-foot shelving system, like a Martha setup where it's wrapped in plastic, just a shelf wrapped in plastic. But that was with stacking blocks and all kinds of like, space saving kind of tricks. So yeah, you can crank up a decent amount in a small space, especially if you don't have walkways. The biggest issue in small spaces like that is your airflow and circulation. So something like shiitake, where they're not so picky with airflow, would be a good candidate for that. But like oysters, if you cram them in a small room, it's hard to get good circulation to where you're not going to have really lanky product, and you want to have it to where the stems are short and the caps are big. And if you don't have good airflow, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got one of those little setups actually right behind the screen. You can't see it. Let's see what else here. Allison says we're interested in working on habitat rehab using fungi.
Oh, I saw an interesting question in the chat.
Yes. Uh-oh, Logan, I think you're frozen.
Yeah, I was on use cultivating glomeromycota, which are in our bus.
Did you want to take that question?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So when it comes to cultivating our vascular mycorrhizae, they're actually obligate symbionts. So they actually need to be in association with a plant to be able to cultivate them. So cultivating on compost blocks or doing kind of block systems is not going to work. Typically, when we're doing our vascular mycorrhizae, they're doing them with a pampas grass, and they're inoculating the roots. And then as like the root mass expands, the amount of mycorrhizae will expand, and they can keep moving that dirt onto new things with pampas grass, and it grows really fast and has a really deep tap system. So if we're interested in doing the kind of mushroom cultivation for mycorrhizal species, for a lot of the time is with obligate symbiont. So the one way is that pampas grass is one of the most common ways of doing that. I'm not sure if it's specific with the glomeromycota, which was in the question. I know the glomeromycota to associate with a lot of wide variety species prized. And then also I know a lot of mushroom cultivators, like I've worked for mycorrhizal applications before where I've gathered wild specimens for them. And I think they may use bioreactors to help create more offspring, more hyphal fragments to use in their products, as well as doing wet sieve method around indigenous mycorrhizae. So there's wet sieve method if you're interested in learning how to create your own mushrooms.
Yeah, pampas grass. That's interesting. Yeah, that's something that I really, because we had a soil consultant out here come to the farm. They wanted to sell me their whole line of things, and so they wanted to walk out in the field, look at everything, and they were like, "Yeah, you don't have enough." They said you don't have enough fungi in the soil. So that was definitely something that I was concerned about. Although we have been doing it's been a no-till cover crop since midsummer, so you'd think there'd be a lot of biodiversity in there. Claudia is asking
biomass.
Whoops, you cut out there for a bit, Logan.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, I was wondering if were they talking about the species diversity, like how many species of fungi were there, or is it just the amount of biomass of fungi in the soil?
Well, what they were actually saying is they didn't see enough molds on the soil. They said they wanted to see more mold on the soil. So yeah, because we actually, I mean, like, if we go out there right now, it's completely covered with biomass because we no-till the next cover crop in. We did a 6-way cover crop, no-till the next one in. And so, I mean, it's basically a map, the entire prairie across the field. But anyway, I would like to increase the amount of biodiversity out there for that. Kevin says, it seems like a bad idea to have a lab and fruiting room in the same garage.
You just have to isolate them. You have to isolate them with air. So I have, like, my workshop is all in the same building, but you have to build the zones separately. I have a positive pressure lab. That's like super important that you have a HEPA filter blowing into your lab 24/7. And TR has the same thing in his lab, to where it's just
positive
full
pressure.
of. But yeah, you gotta have positive pressure. And
but
then
the short answer, let me cut in real quick. The short answer to that question, he said, is it a bad idea to have it all together? The short answer is yes. The complex answer is, can you get away with it? And that's yes, you can also get away with it, but it's not a good idea. It's a good idea to have it elsewhere, but can you? Yes. And that's what Eric is explaining. And yes, you can get away with it, but if you screw up, it's not going to be good. But positive pressure, like Eric was saying, every lab, you will want positive pressure. And for those people watching that don't understand what that is, it is air coming from outside of a room, creating positive pressure. That means it's blowing air. You know, imagine a fan blowing in your house from outside the house. It's creating positive airflow in there. We do that with a HEPA filter. So there is sterile air always going in. So if you open the door to the lab, it's always blowing air out and not allowing as much stuff in.
And then on the other side of that, in your fruiting room, you have to have your fruiting room negative pressure, which means that you can have a fan on your intake and a fan on your exhaust, but your exhaust has to be pushing more volume than your intake. So when you open the door, the air goes in the room, it gets sucked in the room and out the exhaust, and not blowing spores into your warehouse or into your garage. So you have to have your lab positive pressure HEPA and your fruiting room negative pressure. You don't need HEPA in your fruiting room, but you need to have negative pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's a great question. Jared says, ran the numbers on making my own blocks and small scale. It's cheaper to buy them. Yes. Yes. Start with buying them, get your feet wet, figure it out, make sure it's for you. Then go buy the $10,000, $20,000 that you're going to take to set up the new blocks well. Another question here is there anything else you can sell that uses the mushrooms you grow besides selling for food? Yes, there's a lot of things you can use mushrooms for. We're going to talk about some of that tomorrow. So we've got a couple people that are going to talk about that tomorrow. Eric, TR, Logan, anyone want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I'll say some stuff in regards to, or go ahead, Eric, I'll let you start, but I'd like to say something for sure.
Okay, I'm actually in the middle of building a inspected kitchen right now for value-added products. So we're building what was my classroom is now going to be a kitchen. We got some pots and some dehydrators and a triple wash sink and all that. And we're going to be taking our excess mushrooms that are not selling right now, boiling them, marinating them, and then dehydrating them into mushroom jerky. We're also going to just be dehydrating mushrooms, like say lion's mane, which is known for its traditional medicine uses. So we can take that and pulverize it or just dry it out, add it to products, add it to seasonings, all kinds of things. So yeah, we're going to be doing some value-added products really soon here at Myers Mushroom to help with COVID, with the drop in sales from COVID. So what were you going to say, TR?
In regards to what other income revenues, so I take it that person was asking a question about what else can you do with mushrooms because they were thinking about selling them. What I see a lot of people do is get into a mindset to where they think that the mushroom industry is only what they've heard of, and so they stop thinking on their own. If you're going to sell mushrooms, you're going to be a business person. So don't trap your brain and trap yourself into a box to where you can't think outside of it. It's infinite. Just because it hasn't been done yet doesn't mean that you can't come up with a different way to sell. Being a business person is it's about hustling. At the end of the day, you are going to have to hustle, whether my hustle is blocks. I have to sell blocks, but I don't want to trap myself into a mindset of only blocks, of I can only sell mushrooms to restaurants. I can only go to a farmer's market. No, you're a business person. Think like one. Think outside the box. What can you do? There are infinite numbers of things that people can do. And I don't like to hear people get trapped inside of a box to where they can only think one way. Think bigger, think larger, bigger, stronger, faster.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say about that.
No, that's great. I mean, our method has been, because our store is not opening until next year. For a retail store, I mean, the place we bought has 12,000 cars a day go by it. So it's a natural for a retail store. So that's going up when we sell all our produce and vegetables and flowers and mushrooms there. But now we're going after all the CSAs and natural food stores in the area, because these CSAs, and like last week, literally within a couple hours of dropping mushrooms up in the store, we had sold out of what we had for the week. So that's where we are going. That's what we're attacking. No, we're not going to farmers markets. Yes, we'll probably try some chefs, but chefs they're not buying a lot right now. So we're going after the CSAs, which have doubled in the last year because everyone's buying from them and they don't have a mushroom supplier. So that's where we're going with our initial until our store is open, until we can start delivering direct. So yeah, there's so many ways to sell this.
Yeah, and a point that you made without saying it specifically was diversification. Whenever your entire business is dependent on restaurants and COVID hits, you are in a bad scenario.
Yes.
And I was in a bad scenario, just selling blocks. Most of my customers were selling to restaurants. And I can tell you what, it made me think long and hard. I need to diversify. So people getting into this, don't rely on one thing. Diversify right off the bat. Sell the CSA, sell the restaurants, sell to farmers markets, and don't rely on one place, because you'll get in a scary situation. I can tell you that.
Yes. Yeah. Jennifer says she's been doing trials with pine pellets using master mix due to some sources of hardwood drying up. Any experience with the viability of this for oyster or lion's mane? Andrew says he's been doing a ton of oysters and hericiums on pine pellets, has been successful. Interesting.
Yeah, I've never grown on pine, so I don't know. Never grown on pine pellets.
I know a lot of California growers and Oregon growers grow on the Douglas fir, which is a conifer.
Yeah, and they do fine on Doug fir.
Let's get into this. Can we get into substrate and sourcing it from across the country versus buying locally? I can't believe this trend of people they're buying across the nation because they think that they're stuck on soy hull and oak fuel pellets, when there's so many other options out there that work, that are cheaper. I mean, we grow on agricultural waste. That's what we're growing on here. So you should find local agricultural waste. When I talk to somebody in Cuba that wants to grow, I don't tell them to import soy hull and import oak fuel pellets. I say, what is the agriculture there? What do they grow? Oh, sugarcane? All right, we'll grow on sugarcane. And that's the mindset that growers need to have. You should be getting your substrate at like $200 a ton dry. That's really what it should be around, somewhere around that price range. If you're not, it's getting marked up by middlemen. So I've sold some in the past because I bought 22 tons, and that's like a 3-year supply for my operation. So I had to unload some. But I think that the whole concept of getting stuck on just master's mix, and there was no master's mix 4 years ago. It didn't even exist. Like nobody was growing.
It was actually 5 years ago, Eric.
Yeah, when TR came up with it and unleashed it on the world and revolutionized the fungi kingdom.
So what happened before that?
It was
Straw.
straw. It was
Yeah.
sawdust and bran.
Yep, and beet
Yeah.
pulp. Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
just the standard. And I'm totally on board with what Eric's saying. Just because I love sawdust and soybean hulls doesn't mean that that's what you grow on. You know, there is a reason why I chose to start growing on. I'll tell the sort of the background is I was growing on straw and cottonseed hulls, but I'm in Missouri. So whenever you're growing on cottonseed hulls in a non-cotton producing state, the availability goes up and down. Did I get good yields? Yeah. Did I get as good as on sawdust and soybean hulls? No, but were they good? Yeah. But then I lost, the availability of cottonseed hulls, and I'm like, oh crap. So you need to look at what's readily available. What's readily available at pretty much all over the country. You can get soybean hulls. That was one of the huge deciding factors on why I started trialing soybean hulls. So you look at what you have available, what gives you good yields, but to get caught up on this whole sawdust and soybean hulls when it is a nightmare to find, I mean, is it worth paying the extra money? You can go back to the economics of it all. Okay, if I pay X for soybean hulls shipped from Illinois, Iowa, wherever they're, Ohio, Indiana, you can look at it like, is your yield affected that much? These are all mathematical business things that we can figure out easily. But to get caught up, if you're in Cuba, or if you're in one of the African countries, or if you're in Mexico, or one of these places that they're hard, soybean hulls are hard to come by, well, you're going to buy them from the United States and have them shipped over there. You're going to spend a fortune, and it's not going to be made up in mushrooms. So you got to think, sugarcane bagasse or bagasse or whatever it's called. Wheat straw, oat straw, any type of agro. I mean, they grow on, oysters grow on paper. So we don't need to get caught up in exactly one thing. There's a bigger picture, and it's complex, and it all boils down to money.
Yeah. I mean, like hemp, we were talking that the couple of days, hemp herds, there's some great research that they're getting great yields on that. And right now the industry is going through some massive changes, I think. And I think in a couple of years when it settles down and that's actually a lot more available, I think that's a great way to use all of that.
That's a whole nother hour conversation.
Yes.
There's no hemp fiber industry in the U.S. though. That's the issue. And the extraction industry, they don't process the stalks. You know what I mean? That the stalks are just waste, and nobody's pelletizing them. Nobody's saving them really. And a lot of the trash is all contaminated because they run chemicals through it from when they're making oils and stuff like that. So that's the problem right now. Once the hemp fiber industry becomes a thing, not the CBD oil thing. Once the hemp fiber industry comes up with all the infrastructure, then yes, I'm sure we can get pelletized hemp stalks that would be cheaper than fuel pellets because they're growing, 20 tons per acre or whatever, and the numbers are insane with hemp. Exactly. But we're just not there yet as a nation. Right now, we're stuck on the CBD thing and CBGs and all that kind of stuff.
What about corn fodder?
You can grow on corn fodder. It's just not. It's not super readily available because it's based on usually the farmers leave that on their field because it's not cost effective to take it out and then replace what that added to the field in fertilizer. See what I'm saying? I've talked to a couple, so it's harder to come up with. And if you're growing at any scale and someone says this is hard to come up with, it immediately makes you look for something else.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. And I just want to remind folks, we've got a lot of you on tonight. Thank you so much for being with us. Go ahead and share the stream. That really helps us get the word out there. We have over 20,000 people signed up for the summit, which is amazing. But I'd love to see that, 40,000, let so many more people learn about how to grow their own mushrooms and, start new businesses. and just even growing them for yourselves, because that's what we talked about today, was just in your backyard even. So go ahead, share the stream. Let's get more people that are learning all about how to grow mushrooms. Garen says, great stuff today. I really like this format a lot better than going to a conference, for the sole reason of being able to pause the video to catch up and take much better notes. Great presentations. That's awesome. Someone asks, how much does 100 blocks cost? And obviously that's a massive variation, because there's all different sizes of blocks out there. And then obviously you have to do refrigerated shipping most of the year. So anywhere from, like, if you get a 4 or 5 pound block, $4 or $5, 10-pound blocks. TR, what do you, is it 12 pounds that you do, or 10-pound blocks?
I do 10-pound blocks, and it's on a scale, and you had to ask me here. So 100, I think, is between 100 and 200. My prices are about $9 a block plus shipping. If they want to know, get an actual sheet price list, they can shoot me an email at earthangelmushrooms@gmail.com.
But the killer on that is the shipping. So it's going to cost you just about as much to ship 200 blocks, a full pallet, 7 feet tall, versus shipping half a pallet. And it has to ship refrigerated, because you don't want to cook your mushrooms in a truck. So it might cost you more to buy that 200, but it'll cost you less in the long run.
Yeah. And in regards to shipping, refrigerated shipping is expensive. So what a lot of my customers will do is they will buy multiple weeks worth at a time. So they're saving on shipping and they're saving on the block. And then they put the ones that they're not fruiting in the cooler. Yeah. And different species last different lengths, but all will last multiple weeks in a cooler. So then they're saving on shipping, saving on the block price. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it if they're buying blocks. But I just want to make sure, I'm not on here to sell my blocks. And I will say that it is cheaper to make your own blocks, but there are perks to buying blocks. But I just, to give that information out there.
There's all sorts of ways to do it. I mean, so I got blocks from you. I got 200 blocks shipped to me. And again, we're about, 12 hours apart, 10 hours apart?
I think it's under 10. Where you're in Cincinnati, or where you're outside of Cincinnati?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's about 8 hours.
8 hours.
Okay. About 8 hours. Yep.
So yeah, shipping was about $500, and then the blocks were like $2,200 or something like that. And so I forget how much it was total. Maybe it was 8. I forget what it was. I think I'm
gonna pull up my QuickBooks real quick on my phone. Get it exactly.
Yes. And I will see what the exact total was.
It works out to be about $12 a block, right?
No, whenever people are getting blocks on a schedule, pallet at a time, it ends up being close to $10 a block.
Yes.
Delivered about $10 a block. That's the go-to number. About that.
Yeah. $21.75 was the invoice, so it was basically $9.95 or something like that. Or no, wait a minute, a little bit more than that, because 200 blocks, so it was maybe like $10.20 or something like that.
And you should get 3 pounds, 2.5 pounds per block minimum. Yeah. And if you're selling at $10 a pound, just for numbers' sake, you're tripling your money, but then you also got to subtract your overhead too. You got to subtract your labor, your package. So you're probably doubling your money at the end of the day.
That's the exact calculations that we did when we tried to figure this all out. Yeah. Yeah. So people are asking agricultural waste, exactly what I was talking about with my husband. He has a mill, and I have a supply of hardwood sawdust. Absolutely. And then someone's asking, can you grow mushrooms on spent grains from breweries? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you can, but they are super, super high in nitrogen. So you'll have to cut it with something.
And the biggest pain with that is, because I used to deliver to a brewery, and that was one of the ideas I tried to play with. And you have to use it as soon as you get it, or refrigerate it, or dry it. Its shelf life is like hours. So when they run that mash, it's hot, and then they empty out their mash tun and put it in a tub. when you bring it home, it stays hot and it starts to ferment. So if you don't dry it out or cool it down, it's going to ferment like overnight, and then it's going to spoil. It just gets rotten.
If that person was asking about distiller's grains, they're not only from just the brewery. You can buy distiller's grains. So if that person was
like
asking that question, yeah, you can buy them dried. You can buy them wet from the ethanol plants. And you can look up online prices of these commodity type agricultural byproducts. And it'll say wet or it'll say dry. So if that person was asking the question, can you use them in your substrate? You can use them as part of your substrate. And they are super readily available. You can get distiller's grains everywhere.
Okay. And someone's asked, can rice hulls be used with hardwood pellets?
Yes.
Yeah. And you can use rice bran too if you're like a West Coaster. You know, that's where rice is grown in California. So again, you know, use what's available locally.
Okay. So rice hulls to me would be so low and not, because isn't like the thing with the Masters mix and the soybean hulls is they've got a lot of protein in them, right?
Yeah, more protein. It probably wouldn't do as well. And from what I've heard, they don't hold water very well either. So you're gonna have. I would say, you know, if you're gonna try rice hulls, run trials on it, but it's probably not gonna be a very good.
Yeah,
it's not gonna be comparable to sawdust and soybean hulls.
Yeah, it wouldn't be supplement. You would still need something with some protein in there. You know, some nitrogen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so someone's asking, can I grow something in my large garden that I can use to grow mushrooms on? I mean, grow some straw if you want, Sudan grass, even like if you can get your hands on some hemp, like fiber hemp.
Yeah.
Grass.
You're asking about what kind of mushrooms to grow in their garden, or what kind of plants to grow in their garden to grow mushrooms on?
What kind of plants to grow and put mushrooms on?
Oyster mushrooms will grow on anything.
Anything, yeah.
Someone is asking, you guys were testing compostable bags. Did that work?
So we had, yeah. Unicorn did come out with biodegradable bags, but they cost more. They're not really super biodegradable. Like I've left some outside for a whole year, and they kind of fell apart, but you still have to like mechanically break. Like they get very crumbly. The filter patch is still not biodegradable. So at the end of the day, Unicorn listed them on their website for a while. They're no longer listed on their website. I still do stock them. There's a couple customers who do buy biodegradable bags, but the performance of them was not better than normal bags. We had issues at first where the bags were literally falling apart because the mixture wasn't right. And then the other part, when they did figure out and get the mixture right, they don't seal as good. They're a little bit more finicky on the sealer, on the impulse sealer when you're in the lab. So it's one of those things I recommend if you're growing on bags, just make sure that you have control of those bags, that you put all those bags in a big garbage bag so they don't go blowing away and throw it out. You know, it's one thing if you throw them loose, because then when the garbage truck like loads it into their truck, it blows away. You know, that's what you don't want. You don't want stuff to blow away. But as long as you're putting them all in one big garbage bag and tying a knot on it, it's going to go to the landfill and get buried. You know, because even biodegradable bags, you're not going to be like throwing in your compost and growing on them. I mean, it's still petroleum products. Even if it does break completely down, it's still plastic. You know, how I look at it is the biodegradable bags are a little bit better if one does break out and go into the woods, you know, and some animal will get stuck in it or whatever, it'll fall apart.
What kind of animal gets stuck in a bag? Elephant?
I don't know, like fish. You know,
I'm kidding.
You know what I'm kidding about.
I'm kidding. A deer? I saw a deer get caught in a bag one time, Eric. I'm just kidding, man.
Yeah, and you shot it.
Oh, man. And for those of you people out there watching this video, Eric and I go way back. We're really close, so I can give him crap like that.
So Jared's asking, been buying 5-pound blocks. Will a 10-pound block double my output?
Not totally. So you do lose a little bit of efficiency. However, if you are small scale, there is no comparison in the workload you are going to do to get X number of pounds. And X is the number that you need to generate, like let's say by yourself to make money. And 5-pound bags would mean that you hire an employee, do 10-pound bags because it makes economic sense.
Okay. And David's asking about a recording of this. David, we leave these recordings up for usually a day or so. It's kind of like the summit. So they go for 24 hours and then they get added to the summit recordings aspect of things. And then Anna's asking about food sensitivities when it comes to fruiting body absorbing from substrate. So if you want to go back and listen to day 1, so 2 days ago when we started the summit, we had Trad on and he answered this. And basically it's a fruiting body. So it's not like it cannot transfer like gluten into the mushroom. You will not. That's the really cool thing about mushroom is it takes like sawdust and turns it into food, something that humans could never break down with their bodies. So I don't know if you guys have experience with that, but that was just what his response was.
No.
Okay.
The only issue you would ever have is if like you don't trim the stem butts, if you have like a super sensitive like gluten allergy, because there is, depending on what you're growing on, like say shiitake, if you have wheat bran in there, there could be a little bit on the stem butt if you're not trimming them, but that's other than that, no, it's not going to be in the fruiting body.
Yeah. All right. Someone's asking, can we start price fixing specialty mushrooms?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the issue right now. Is so many people are getting in. It's getting competitive, so you got to be efficient and have your marketing on game.
Hey, we are in a capitalistic society. You perform your best and operate in a capitalistic society. So price fixing, it is supply and demand.
Yeah.
Yeah. UTR don't set the prices in the nation for mushrooms. That's not what happens. It goes.
So one of my customers was actually, he was a customer back when I farmed in New York State. He was asking me, why are mushrooms easy to grow and so expensive? And I was like, well,
easy to grow.
Yes and no.
He doesn't know how hard it is.
But then the other thing is, I said, right now, the reason the price is still so high is because there's a ton of R&D going into the whole thing. So there's a lot of cost that doesn't actually look like it shows up. Because I can say I take a $11 block and turn it into $30 or something like that. But they're not seeing the overhead. They're not seeing all of that other things. But I said, look, in a couple of years, prices will start to come down. I said, there's no doubt about it that the prices will start to come down. That's what it means, like to bag a deer.
Yeah, Eric knows how to bag a deer in a unicorn bag. All right, so he says. I'm just kidding.
All right, here's another one. $50 to 70% success rate.
What? So are they getting contamination in incubation? Is that what their issue is?
That's what it sounds like.
You should have like almost 100% in your colonization, to where like maybe a bag or two per 100 will be showing a little bit of funk. Otherwise, something's really wrong. Like your spawn is wrong, your flow hoods are dirty, your lab is dirty. And then from there, putting them into fruiting, they should all fruit. Like there should not be ones that do not fruit. Otherwise, you might be using bad spawn. That's one of the questions usually I'd start with when people are having issues is, where are you getting your spawn from? Are you making it or are you buying it from a reputable supplier? Because that's a big difference. If you're buying quality commercial spawn versus some culture that you have on a petri dish that you've been storing in the fridge for 3 years, that it's night and day difference. The culture storage and the genetics, the quality of it. So yeah, you should have at least 90+% success rate in incubation, and then in fruiting, everything should fruit. Sometimes like second or third flush, you'll get some funk. If you haven't been cleaning your room properly, like your HVAC, if you haven't been cleaning that, or your misters, you might see a little bit of funk on the caps where they get like little bumps or just kind of mutated looking, but they still should grow.
So let me rebut what Eric said. What Eric said is absolutely correct, but you are going to go, the longer you're in this, you are going to go through times to where everything goes wrong and you feel like you're doing everything right. That's how this thing works, is you're going to think you have it whipped. You're going to think you have everything under control, and nothing is going to work out. And the bigger you get, the harder it becomes. I remember when I'm growing in my basement, starting off thinking, well, when I can grow 500 pounds a week, life is going to be great. No, life gets exponentially harder. And then I was like, well, when I can grow shiitakes, life is going to be easy. I'm going to be on easy street. No, it wasn't until I started growing shiitakes that I knew what a ass kicking was. That's how this works. So the bigger you get, the harder things become to control. And the larger you get, that's when you see contamination, because you drop your guard one time when you're growing in your basement, you lose 3 bags. Now you're doing thousands of bags a week, and those 3 bags become 2,000 bags. And that hurts a lot worse, a lot worse. So what Eric said is correct. However, it gets exponentially harder, and you will see times you'll know your batting average about. So let's say your batting average is 5%. You should strive for that, and you know that if it's higher than 5, you're doing something wrong. And everything I've said, like I've said in some of my YouTube videos, take it as a lesson. You're doing something wrong. There's something flawed in your process. So if you're getting more than that, start analyzing yourself, start analyzing everything you're doing. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's teaching you something.
And that's a lot of it too, is figuring out how to troubleshoot what's going on, where it's going wrong. That's where Petri dish is. A lot of people don't realize how handy a Petri dish can be. It's not just for growing out cultures. You can troubleshoot where issues are coming from with a Petri dish to see if your table is dirty, see if your flow hood, do a fallout test where you put a Petri dish out and let the flow hood flow onto it, and then seal it up and incubate it like that with nothing on it, because there could be crap coming out of your flow hood. It could have a hole in it you don't see. So there's all kinds of uses for Petri dishes. And
don't use one. Don't use one Petri dish, because you might have stuck in your dirty finger that was just in your nose in the plate. Petri dishes cost like 10 cents to make. So make a lot of them, because one is not a representative sample. You want multiples. If you're going to do that, use multiples.
So when I do a fallout test, I put 1 every foot. So I'll have 8 Petri dishes across the whole table, and then I'll mark them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then that way if 4 and 5 get contaminated, then I know that part of my filter might have a hole in it. But there's other tools too for clean rooms. You can use particle counters too to see if the air is dirty. But that's what it all is. It's all about keeping your clean room clean. I recommend checking out, like MIT has some published things about how to maintain a good clean room. There's other clean room like SOPs, and you don't have to follow them to the T, but you should kind of take little pieces of it and see how you can implement it into your operation, in your lab, and in your incubation to keep it cleaner, keep the contamination down.
Very cool. That was a great answer. Yeah, that was great. All right, folks, let's send, if you have any final questions, we're going to wrap it up pretty quick here. I just want to thank, both of you for so much. And Logan Pop, I think he had bad internet, so I think that's why he left, but thanks to him too. But yeah, if you have any final questions, folks, get them in, and we are going to wrap up tonight. Tomorrow we have one more day, and then it is all over. David said so much gratitude for your perspectives. So he really appreciates that. So yeah, hopefully that will
Thanks everybody for watching, for sure. And Michael, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate
Sorry,
it. Yeah.
sorry I couldn't speak, but it's been crazy busy around here. I mean, just trying to keep up with everything, you know. So
I know. Yeah, this year has been one for the books, I think, for everybody in the world.
Yeah, that's
sure.
crazy.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. Claudia is asking how to make microbial rennet with fungi.
No idea.
No idea.
Rennet,
Yeah,
like cheese rennet? That I don't know.
so that's probably a good question for and the contact information for people is still up from yesterday. But yesterday, Trad might be someone for that. Jess Starwood might be someone that could answer that. She's more of a chef and the chef side of things with mushrooms. So both of them. Yeah, Joyce is asking, do you guys travel to help farmers set up their grows?
Yes.
Okay, TR does.
Not currently, so I'm still enlisted in the military. I still have till March that then I'll be separating. Hopefully then I will be able to travel more, but right now I'm locked down. I really can't. I can't even take any leave until then with the program that I'm in right now. So I am separating and I'm going full-time mushroom farmer, but as of right now, no.
Okay, and then one last question: where do you see the industry going in the next couple of years?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Where I see it is there, and I've seen this trend since I've started. So I officially started Earth Angel Mushrooms in 2014, and this trend has happened since then. It has become more local. So even the huge farms, some of the YouTube videos I did with some of these huge farms, they are attempting to make it more local-ish to capture that market. So I think that it has continued to do that more and more, and I think that it will continue. I don't know how long. I don't know how long it will do that. Hopefully for a long time, but that's where I see it going.
I see in general, like a lot of these new farms popping up. I think that there's going to be, I've already seen it where there's a surge of too many farmers popping up, and then the weak ones fizzle out. While you have the big ones that are more efficient and get it, you know, really know how to make the numbers happen and how to pull it all together. They come through shining at the end, pushing 400, 800 pounds a week. So yeah, there's definitely. There's still spots that you can get started in, but I'd say for the most part, most major cities already have a major grower or two or three. And there's definitely room in the market. I'm not saying that if you're an aspiring new grower, there's not going to be any room for you, but you definitely have to look at a different angle. You have to look at markets that aren't being tapped and figure out what your angle is going to be. You can grow mushrooms and only dehydrate them and only make value-added products out of it, and you can make it profitable because you can sell nationwide. So there's a lot of different angles that you can approach with that. But that's where I see the industry going. I think there's definitely going to be a surge in the next couple of years. There already is a surge, and you see a lot of farms popping up, and then you're going to see a lot of farms fold under, and the strong will survive.
Well, it's really interesting, Eric, that there's really no major player in the Cincinnati, Dayton area. There's people in Kentucky coming up into Cincinnati, but there's no one really in this Dayton area we're going down into Cincinnati because I've done the research. So obviously now,
and there are holes. Like they just became a huge hole up in Kansas City recently. A large farmer that was tapping all the Kansas City farms or all the Kansas City restaurants. They're selling their operations. I mean, there's definitely places where there is a huge operation that's very successful, and they fold their cards, and it leaves the market open for anybody. So there are holes, but I think they're all going to get filled in the next couple of years, and there'll be a turnover too. So it's not like once there's a grower there, it's forever. The grower's going to stop growing eventually, and somebody else is going to step in. But
But I want to go back to what you said, Eric, and this is actually a tease for everyone to come back tomorrow and join us on the summit. Is there's a lot other ways to make money on your mushroom farm, from classes, selling blocks to people to fruit on their counters, jerky, stock, value added that Eric's working on, the mushroom tinctures, the powders, cordyceps now starting to go up.
Selling the mushroom kits, like there's some farms that are just selling thousands of kits that ship across the nation. Like North Spore, Nearby Naturals is a newer one that's selling nationwide, and they're killing it. selling just fruiting blocks, you know,
Yeah.
like 2 and 5 packs of 10-pound blocks for people to fruit on their countertop, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so much fun. I mean, you can grow, you can just start them in your house. And we've actually got a little setup we did with a big storage container that we actually have automated, you know, air and moisture in that and heat on that. So, but that was kind of fun just to kind of mess with that. I don't know if I sent you that picture, but I top fruited some Italian oysters on that. I mean, seriously, we probably had 3.5, if not 4 pounds. I forgot the weight.
Wow.
I didn't forget. I did not want to walk out to the barn and get the scale and bring it in. But there was a mountain of mushrooms on our counter after I cut them all off. It blew me away. But it's so much fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. TR, Eric.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Before we get off, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think that I can speak on behalf of everyone watching and you, Michael, that we all want to know what type of hair product that Eric Myers is using now, because his hair looks so good for this video. So what, can you tell us all what you're using in your hair, Eric? Because it's sexy.
I couldn't even tell you.
I was going to write it down because my wife's been telling me I got a haircut a long time ago.
I need some of it and some beard grooming stuff. It looks good. Okay, I'm done.
We needed that.
We did.
Well, thank you for having us, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, you guys have a great night. And again, everyone, thank you so much for watching. And make sure to come back. We got a whole other day of talks tomorrow. All right. See you, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.